For everybody that loves DreamWorks and their villains, it's hard to avoid Kung Fu Panda.
The panda?
That's the panda!
In their films, we got some of the most iconic, threatening, and just plain entertaining villains. Though when talking about which one's the best, everyone usually points towards Lord Shen.
Out of all the Kung Fu Panda villains we've been given so far, Shen is perhaps the greatest of them all.
I do believe that Lord Shen is the trilogy's greatest villain.
What's in the box, Shen?
Oh, it's your parting gift. Part of you here, part of you there, and part of you waiting with this, tightening the wall.
Lord Shen is DreamWorks' most terrifying villain.
Which is understandable. Shen's impact emotionally and physically affects everything about the titular Kung Fu Panda. The guy literally ended the entire species of pandas just because of a superstition. The themes and insight into this villain and his parallels to the main panda undoubtedly make him the better villain. But even with that said, I still believe Tai Lung is as great as we remember, if not even better. This is all because of his close relation to another panda that started when he was just a cub at the Jade Palace. Tai Lung was found by Shifu, the red panda, as an infant, wrapped in purple cloth and left at the threshold of the palace gates. We have no idea how exactly it got there, unlike Po, whose entire point to the second film is how Po got into the hands of the greatest of all time goat, Mr. Pink. But this shows how similar to a story Tai Lung's is to Po. It's just like him, he just showed up one day, which makes me pray for a Tai Lung origin film. You know, if it's more of a Kung Fu Panda 2 origin and not a Lightyear, cause like, who cares? Shifu decided to adopt this cub who randomly appeared at the door and raise him as his own. We don't know how the name Tai Lung became his own, but considering it means Great Dragon in Cantonese, we assume Shifu did this in the hopes that he would become the Great Dragon Warrior. As soon enough, he begins Tai Lung's training. As a child, Tai Lung showed natural talent in the art of Kung Fu, being able to rip out Shifu's hairs and slap a punching bag across the entire room. So Shifu trained him, saying that Tai Lung was destined for greatness, becoming even more convinced this was a sign that Tai Lung was the Dragon Warrior foretold in legend, giving him praise at any and every sign of destruction, even when he tore apart the whole training hall in order just to train his strength even further. Tai Lung became proud and incredibly confident in his abilities of Kung Fu, having mastered all sorts of advanced techniques. Despite all his accomplishments, Tai Lung still only sought the power of the Dragon Scroll and firmly believed he was the Dragon Warrior, just as Shifu believed he was. It was his overwhelming pride and lust for power that alerted Oogway of the darkness in Tai Lung's heart. He refused him the title, surprising and disappointing both Shifu and Tai Lung looked to his master, his father figure, his last hope for support, only for Shifu to do nothing to object to Oogway's decision. It's clear that Shifu raised the monster of a child, although accidentally. Every time we see Shifu training Tai Lung, he always gives him praise whenever Tai Lung looks for it. This is his only parental figure and force of good and nurture in his life. This causes Tai Lung's only goal to be someone Shifu can be proud of. Tai Lung got stronger and stronger in every way just to get his master, his father's approval, for him to acknowledge how incredible his son has become, and nothing would make Shifu more proud than becoming the Dragon Warrior. He's been praised for causing violence and brute force, but something that only Oogway understands is that the Dragon Warrior needs to be something more than that. The Dragon Warrior is more than another role to take for selfishness. So when Oogway denies him, it's devastating. He's never been denied so far, and this goal, becoming the Dragon Warrior, is all he needed. He needs this for his father. His entire life, he's been training and reinforced just for this one goal. The only thing he wants is this role. This title that has been his namesake for as long as he can remember. All he wants to do was achieve what Shifu dreamed. So in this scene, he looks around, confused, and once again looks towards his father, just as he did every time during training. When he first punches a dummy, he looks back to his father's approval. When he trains his way to destroying the training hall, he looks back to his father's approval. But this time he looks back to his father in a dazed confusion as to why Oogway denied him of the Dragon Scroll. This time, he turns away. Not even debating with Oogway, not even supporting his son after all these years of training, with blood, sweat, and broken bones. Shifu does nothing in support of Tai Lung, just allowing the darkness Oogway saw to fester beyond steaming. Confused and outraged, Tai Lung laid waste to the valley, cutting a swath of destruction in his fury before charging back to the Jade Palace to try and take the Dragon Skull by force. Shifu charged to stop him with a direct attack to destroy what he created, but hesitated, unwilling to strike a lethal blow to one he still considered his son. Though Tai Lung was still furious that Shifu had let Oogway's decision stand, though he did not hesitate to knock his forsaking father aside, shattering his hip for leaping for his scroll. Oogway then jabbed multiple pressure points in Tai Lung's chest, blocking his chi and knocking him out. Shifu watched in horror as the one he raised and trained fell before him, crawling to Tai Lung as his body lays there unmoving. He truly loved Tai Lung more than anyone we ever see in this entire series, this entire franchise. He loved his son more than anyone before or since. There was nothing to do but prevent such a devastation from happening again. Shifu bowed to Uguay's wishes and helped oversee the construction of the ominously impressive Turgon prison, located in the frigid outskirts of Mongolia. A prison built to hold a single prisoner of Tai Lung, carved right out of the mountain, filled with many walkways, elaborate and deadly defenses, self-destructing mechanisms, with only one way in and one way out. In the deepest part of the prison, Tai Lung was chained and fitted with a restraining tortoise shell with various acupuncture needles in crucial places along his back, keeping his chi constantly blocked, causing the interfering with his breathing to the minimum and making him almost fully immobile. Leaving him under the supervision of a rhino commander, Shifu and Uguay parted ways from Tai Lung, leaving him in a prison as punishment for his crimes against the citizens of the Valley of Peace. And now for the time that takes place during the entirety of the first film of Kung Fu Panda, being 20 years after the events of Tai Lung's imprisonment. That's right, we're only now talking about the first film, which includes the main character Po, who I do need to talk about as he is so important to why Tai Lung is so good, and even to why this entire movie is good in general. But to make it more fun, let's look at the events of the movie from Shifu's perspective. I almost said Shifu. 20 years after the events with Tai Lung, while Shifu is training and criticizing the Furious Five, a famous kung fu team of warriors whose goal is to keep the peace in the Valley of Peace, Shifu is alerted that Master Uguay wants to see him. Ego tells of a vision that Tai Lung would return.
That is impossible. He is in prison.
Nothing is impossible.
Zhang!
Shifu immediately sent a palace goose named Xing to fly all the way to Turgon prison to double check that everything is in order to prevent Uguay's vision from coming true, being about 2,485 miles of travel, meaning this guy would have to travel for 37 hours straight. If you're a goose like him, if he was a human like us, he would have to travel for 497 hours or 20 days just because of Shifu's worry.
One often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it.
Uguay vaguely tells Shifu that it was time to choose the legendary dragon warrior, one who would be worthy to receive the power of the dragon scroll, said to give supreme power to whoever reads it. A tournament was to be held to determine which of the Furious Five would be chosen. Attendants of the Jade Palace later hung up portraits throughout the Valley Village, declaring the Furious Five's participation in the Dragon Warrior Tournament, where one of them would presumably be selected by Uguay to receive the Dragon Scroll and be pronounced Dragon Warrior. Shifu meets Master Uguay on the way down the steps from the palace, praising how important and historic today is. Uguay tells Shifu that whoever he chooses will bring peace to the valley.
But also to you.
Master Shifu looks confused, but the tournament commences regardless, with the Furious Five showing off their talents and skills of Kung Fu. After Tigress's performance, Uguay then holds up his hand, silencing the hyper crowd.
I sense the Dragon Warrior is among us.
Furious Five gather around for Master Uguay as he finally is about to choose the Dragon Warrior after all these years. He walks down the steps, ready to point as whoever he points to is the Dragon Warrior. Then a fat panda falls from the sky at the exact moment as Master Uguay was about to point to Tigress. This must obviously be a mistake. There's no way that he would choose.
The universe has brought us the Dragon Warrior.
What?
What? You know, watching this movie normally has me be like, hell yeah, Po gotta win. He's my self-insert character of the film, woohoo, you know? Now I'm completely on side with Shifu that this is some utter horse. You're telling me that my son could be the Dragon Warrior, which resulted in this outburst and imprisonment, and I trained all these five to become the Dragon Warrior, but now this random fat noodle-serving, dumping-loving random panda who has never done Kung Fu in his entire life is the Dragon Warrior. Uguay is one of those characters that works beyond normal comprehension, since he's influenced not by himself but by the universe, as Mr. Uguay has mastered all balance. He's credited as the founder of the Valley of Peace, the creator of Kung Fu, and the developer of the Dragon Warrior legend. Highly upheld for his wisdom, knowledge, and experience, Uguay was considered by many to be a sage. If anyone knows what he's doing in the series, it's him. So this brings me as to why this is his answer, or should I say the universe's answer, since the world has a natural balance to everything, is that Po is the exact opposite of Tai Lung. Now hear me out. The reason Tai Lung was denied by Oogway was because of this darkness in him. This darkness is his overwhelming pride and lust for power. This led to him wanting to be the Dragon Warrior so much he'd harm for it, even to his own father. Meanwhile, Po, he just kind of appeared. He had no real desire to be the Dragon Warrior when he was chosen. He just loves and appreciates Kung Fu to the point of imagining fighting side by side with the Furious Five, to the extent of a kid wanting to fight alongside their favorite superhero. So Po isn't corrupted by this desire of power and a title. He just desires friends and the ability to fight for justice. This is the universe opposites, yin and yang, Po and Tai Lung. This is what Shifu begins to realize over the course of being forced to train Po to make this fat panda into the Dragon Warrior. Shifu begins training Po hard and critically, even more than he did the Furious Five, most likely through the bitterness and hatred that not a single one of his pupils were chosen. He wants Po to quit and not even have the chance to be properly trained, especially not with the kindness he once held for Tai Lung, which pretty much works. Po is training day by day, harder and harder, taking basically punishments as he keeps failing, and failing, with the only nice words he needed being from Master Oogway to not give up on the first day. So yes, he trains day to day, failing and basically being abused, but he never gives up.
So why are you upset?
I probably sucked more today than anyone in the history of Kung Fu, in the history of China, in the history of sucking.
Probably.
Five.
You don't belong here.
Man, you should have seen them. They totally hate me.
You're a disgrace to Kung Fu, and if you have any respect for who we are and what we do, you will be gone by morning.
Totally.
How's Shifu ever gonna turn me into the Dragon Warrior?
I've been taking it easy on you, Panda, but no more.
You are too concerned with what was and what will be.
Your next opponent
Will be me.
There's a saying.
Yeah.
Find your opponent's weakness and make him suffer for it.
Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery.
But a real warrior never quits.
But today is a gift. That is why it is called the present.
Don't worry, Master. I will never quit.
Then Shifu gets the news that Tai Lung has escaped, and immediately runs to Master Oogway, who's at his infamous peach tree, to tell him the bad news.
There is just news. There is no good or bad.
Tai Lung has broken out of prison. He's on his way.
That is bad news. If you do not believe that the Dragon Warrior can stop him.
Even though Shifu protests, he promises to Oogway a promise that he would believe in and train Po, to help a peach seed to be a peach tree, and not force it to be an apple or an orange tree, being willing to guide it, to nurture it.
To believe in it.
To believe in it. Whatever he says, something like that. He then ascends to the heavens in a swirl of flower petals, bestowing his guardianship of the valley upon Shifu. After Po's awesome bit of impersonating Shifu interrupts him to share the news of Tai Lung's escape, Oogway's death, and that Po must be the one to stop him. Shifu refuses to let him go, getting into an argument, insisting that Oogway's advice must be followed. He made a promise to him to trust that he can be the Dragon Warrior. Though Po says that Shifu's not his master anymore and that he's not the Dragon Warrior, Shifu rebuttals, stating why he stayed all this time, but now he won't.
Yeah, I stayed. It hurt, but it could never hurt more than it did every day of my life just being me.
Shifu debates more, saying that he can and will change Po into the Dragon Warrior to defeat Tai Lung.
Even if it takes him 100 years to get here, how are you gonna change this into the Dragon Warrior? Huh? How? How?
I don't know.
I've explained a lot about the plot of this movie. I know this is supposed to be a Tai Lung video, but the thing is, it still is. If you pay attention, this is all important to Tai Lung. This is, as I said before, about how I need to talk about Po, as he is important as to why Tai Lung is so good, and even this entire movie in general. The relationship between Tai Lung, Shifu, and Po, with all its parallels and themes, being baked into the fabric of this movie. Everything I talked about in this movie so far can be traced back to Tai Lung. Oogway had a vision about his escape, so they picked the Dragon Warrior, who turned out to be Po. Oogway understands why Po is the opposite of Tai Lung, as I said before, even enough to the point of their training. Compared to everyone, Tai Lung has had the easiest training out of everyone. After Tai Lung, Shifu didn't treat the Furious Five with any of the same love, being critical and strict with all of them. Then came Po. He treated Tai Lung with love, the Furious Five with borderline disinterest, and Po with pure hate. And this is most definitely because of Po having no training whatsoever, and yet getting what these five have trained years for, and his son, who literally trained his whole life for. But now Shifu must train Po in literal days, and is beginning to believe in what he promised to Oogway. The morning after Tigress led the Furious Five in an attempt to stop Tai Lung themselves, Shifu notices that Po ruined the kitchen, punched a hole through a cabinet, and leaped 10 feet off the ground, doing a perfect split while reaching a cookie jar.
You are 10 feet off the ground and have done a perfect split.
This ignites Shifu to try teaching Po in a different way, by helping a peach seed become a peach tree, helping a panda become a dragon warrior.
I cannot train you the way I have trained the five.
Shifu uses Po's love for food to help train him, doing sit-ups on a branch, spinning against a staff, push-ups over a fire, balancing on a mountaintop, and being able to sneak the food from Shifu himself, resulting into an actual competent warrior somehow. Like, out of everything else in this film, it's crazy that this is how he is taught, but the way they show it makes it less ridiculous somehow, because it shows that Po was never pathetic and could never do it. He just lacked the right motivation. With this motivation and a full stomach, Po is now ready for Tai Lung's return. Tai Lung's rage has only grown after these 20 years of imprisonment. Then one fateful day, a messenger goose named Xing arrived at the Chorgon prison, carrying the message from Shifu to a Rhino commander. He orders to double the guards and tighten security due to a vision Oogway had of Tai Lung returning to the Valley of Peace. The commander only boasted that he had everything under control and that the escape from Chorgon prison was impossible. He shot off how the mighty Tai Lung was completely immobilized, going as far as to stomp on his tail and tease him with the information that Oogway was going to finally choose a dragon warrior and that the dragon warrior would not be Tai Lung. The cocky rhino stepped on his tail to add salt to the wound, and all Tai Lung could do was be still, with the failed great dragon's face being casted only in shadow. Leaving him, Commander and Xing were unaware that a single feather knocked loose from Xing when the commander slapped him on the back from the very entrance of the prison. And once they have left, Tai Lung quietly swept one feather with his unrestrained tail to pick the very intricate lock using only his tail and free himself from his restraints. With the needles gone, Tai Lung moved and efficiently and effectively breathed for the first time in 2 decades and broke the tortoiseshell. He quite literally used one feather and the fact that his tail was free to pick the lock of his entire thing. Oh my gosh. Once freed, Tai Lung was quickly spotted by the guards, who scrambled to contain him with everything they had. The 8-point acupuncture cuffs attached to the boulder still rendered his arms limited, until he managed to use one of the crossbow arrows fired towards him by the guards to destroy one of them. Then he simply cracked the other and parried and reshot another arrow. Realizing he could use them to reach the elevator, Tai Lung threw and kicked 4 arrows onto the mountain and used the 5th to leap onto them. By swinging from one to another, he managed to grab onto the elevator an inch before hundreds of arrows descended, using it as cover to get higher and use the chain to rappel onto higher floors. Driven by his insatiable fury, Tai Lung unleashed his kung fu mastery and proceeded to brutally decimate the guards. He quickly made his way up the levels, overpowering the rhinos both in strength, agility, and skill. The battle climaxed in a standoff at the bridge at the door level, the entrance to the place where the commander slapped a feather down, causing all of this. In the last attempt to oversmart Tai Lung, the rhino commander ordered the bridge to be destroyed by sending off explosives attached to the roof of the prison, making falling chunks of rock-sized boulders smash into the walkway Tai Lung was standing on. Thinking quickly, Tai Lung rapidly leaped from rock to goddamn rock while they are falling, literally doing some Lord of the Rings shit, finally reaching the last bundle of explosives that had yet to be set off and tossed it among the guards as it exploded, blasting open the heavy doors, finishing off the commander and the remaining guards. Grabbing Xing by the neck outside, Tai Lung politely told him to fly back to the Jade Palace with a message of his own.
The real Dragon Warrior is coming home.
After letting Xing go, he set out to return to the Jade Palace, bent on revenge and gaining the power of the scroll he had been denied so long ago. Where did he come from? Where did he go? Now you may have noticed how awesome this scene is. It's one of the best action scenes in all of animation, so I thought I'd pay tribute by taking you through the action and explaining how cool it is through emphasis and explanation with the words I speak and say. Hope I did it well enough to pay tribute. And I thought, hey, I've already explained enough about all this other cool stuff, and we can have some fun with Tai Lung's incredible action scene from this point forward with extra explanation and insight sprinkled around, just like how I've been doing. That cool with you? Cool. Now let's go, go, go! Traveling across China at top speed, Tai Lung came to a rope bridge, being the only passage through the mountains. There, he was confronted by the Furious Five. After a brief attack in which he deflected by Tigress, the bridge was cut and then held by the rest of the Furious Five, as Tai Lung casually demanded where the Dragon Warrior was and left as an unbalanced Tigress reposed and implies it was her.
Where's the Dragon Warrior?
How do you know you're not looking at it?
Tai Lung had heard rumors of the Dragon Warrior's appearance, that he fell from the sky on a ball of fire, and he was a warrior unlike anything the world has ever seen. Monkey unintentionally let it slip that the identity of the Dragon Warrior was named Po, and intrigued Tai Lung declared he would finally have a worthy opponent for a legendary battle.
Finally, a worthy opponent. Our battle will be legendary.
This provoked Tigress, who took him on. However, as the fight progressed, she began to struggle against her more experienced foe, especially once Tai Lung utilized his superior strength, balance, and speed to kick her through half of the wooden bridge and then twist the ropes around her neck, effectively strangling her just by that. Luckily, Tigress was rescued by Crane and joined by the other members of the Furious Five until Mantilus was the only one left to support the bridge. How did he do that? He is strong as heck. One by one, they didn't stand long against him. However, Tai Lung was overwhelmed by the team's combined skill and teamwork for only a moment. The Mantis flung the ropes to unbalance the charging warrior. The five wrapped him in the rope from the remains of the rest of the bridge. With their strength of their combined skills and power, Tigress pushed the subdued enemy and left him to fall to the mist below. However, the Furious Five's victory was short-lived as Tai Lung managed to use whatever was left of the now-destroyed bridge to seamlessly swing up, break free, landing behind the startled team.
Shifu taught you well.
He compliments the five, but then states that he did not teach them everything, proved that their attempt was futile all along, utilizing his nerve attack technique, blocking everyone's chi except for Crane, who was left to transport the four back to the Jade Palace as a warning. The warning being that Tai Lung could defeat the five strongest warriors in the land, and will defeat anyone who will oppose him. Crane managed to fly all the way back to the Jade Palace, carrying the rest of the five to give Tai Lung's warning. Feeling that Po was ready to beat Tai Lung with all his incredible training over the course of the few days, Shifu gave him the Dragon Scroll of Legend, which opened to reveal nothing. Nothing but a blank, golden, reflective surface.
Blank. I don't understand.
Stricken with the scroll's worthlessness, Po and the five were ordered by Shifu to evacuate the village, while he prepared to delay Tai Lung for as long as he could, knowing that the attempt would likely lead to his death. Tai Lung arrived at the steps of the Jade Palace, as expected by Shifu himself. The tense exchange between master and student began, with Tai Lung politely greeting Shifu. It was Shifu coldly made it clear that the failed Dragon Warrior was no longer welcome at the palace, nor was he his master anymore. This is their first conversation since all those years ago. Instead of looking towards his master for approval, all Tai Lung sees is the man who forsake him. The father who stopped showing his son love as soon as he was denied being the Dragon Warrior. The father versus the son. The master versus the student. The failed father versus the failed Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung then mockingly inquired Shifu of Po's whereabouts, in which the master insisted that their fight be between them only, as
That is how it's going to be. That is how it must be.
that is how it must be. Enraged, Tai Lung commenced the fight by leaping into the air and attempting to crush Shifu beneath his feet. He then proceeded to hurl a piece of the broken steps at Shifu, who just evaded the previous attack, distracting him long enough for the snow leopard to send the Kung Fu master flying back into the Hall of Warriors with a punch. Storming into the hall, Tai Lung called the recovering Shifu out for his inability to stand up for him when Master Oogway refused to give him the title of Dragon Warrior, which led to him rotting in jail for 20 years in the first place.
I rotted in jail for 20 years because of your weakness.
Obeying your master is not weakness.
Tai responds to Shifu's justification of obeying one's master being not a weakness, and that Tai Lung not being chosen wasn't his fault, by flinging nearby relics and weapons, all while screaming accusations that it was him, Shifu, who filled his head with dreams and drove him to train until his bones cracked to begin with. And even after all that hard work, the master still denied him from his destiny.
It was never my decision to make.
Tai Lung then deliberately grabs Oogway's staff, correctly deducing its owner's passing, which causes Shifu to finally go on the offensive. Having anticipated this, Tai Lung seamlessly pinned Shifu to the floor, by the throat.
Give me the scroll. I would rather die.
He continues to choke his master with the sacred relic as it shattered in the midst of the struggle. Tai Lung managed to both spite the late Oogway and deliver a great emotional blow upon the now devastated Shifu, which mattered very little to Tai Lung as he continues the attack, bringing their fight to the palace pillars and bursting through the roof as lightning flashes in the background. Tai Lung assaults become increasingly brutal, with Shifu only able to gain the upper hand for a moment before falling back down into the hall, sending Shifu flying against one of the pillars while crashing into a lantern himself. Tai Lung then pounces through the flames as he continued his assault with his paws aflame, demanding to be told how proud Shifu was of him.
What I ever did, I did to make you proud. Tell me how proud you are. Tell me!
Tai Lung finally sends Shifu flying into the steps in front of the moon pool with a double-fisted punch. Extinguishing the flames from his paws, Tai Lung was about to finish Shifu when the weakened master offered a sincere and heartfelt apology, hoping that Tai Lung would stop his quest for the ultimate power, which wasn't his to start with, and redeem himself.
It was my pride that blinded me. I loved you too much to see what you were becoming. What I was turning you into. I'm sorry.
Despite everything, Tai Lung's eyes widened for the first time since he was a kid, looking around slightly, eyes shaking, unsure of what to do. Some part of Tai Lung still cared for his master and wanted to make things right. After this powerful moment of hesitation, he bitterly casted the thought aside for his ambitious lust for power. Once again, he demanded the dragon scroll as he lifted Shifu by the neck.
What? Where is it?
As he proceeded to choke the defiant Shifu.
You will never see that scroll. Never. Hey!
Only to be interrupted by an out-of-breath pro who reveals a scroll in his hands. Tai Lung wasted no time and punched the Dragon Warrior away and grabbed the scroll. Much to his surprise, Po bounced back and redirected the power of his attack back at him. He then ran and caught the fleeing panda, knocking him down the 1,000 steps. They fell and exchanged hits, with Tai Lung hitting most of the steps and being subjected to Po's big old bubbly butt on the top of his face. He fought Po for the possession of the Dragon Scroll, only to be outsmarted and outdone at every turn in a series of game-like obstacles, just like the one Shifu did to Po during his intense training. Tai Lung being caught off guard by all the Dragon Warrior's ingenuity, showing that Po has been so skilled and earned the title of being Dragon Warrior was through his ingenuity, using the exact same tactics that got him to the spot of Dragon Warrior in the first place. He does the rocket card thing again, which knocks the scroll to the roof. While chasing the scroll, Tai Lung became frightened as he saw how athletic Po was, claiming to be the scroll's power while being frightened by Po closing in on the scroll, resulting in Tai Lung strongly kicking the building as it began to collapse. He climbed after the scroll, only to receive several roof tiles to the face. While Tai Lung gained the upper hand when he slammed Po into the ground with a mid-air kick and then used the falling momentum with all his strength to make a burst of dust and rock, effectively creating a crater, defeating his stunning Po long enough to allow Tai Lung to grab the scroll and open it at long last, only to find it was blank.
It's nothing!
As the Panda coughed and struggled to his feet, Po explained to him that there was no special power in the scroll itself, or secret ingredient.
It's just you.
It's just you. Angered and unable to comprehend such stupidity of the scroll's lesson, Tai Lung tried to defeat Po once and for all with the chi blocking punch that took down the furious fight. However, the chi blocking punches and jabs only tickled Po in the process, due to his more unclear nerve pressure points. Po launches Tai into the noodle shop after his stomach absorbs and redirects the punch. Po then uses his newfound powers and finally bests Tai Lung in combat, though the Forsaken Warrior is fought more angrily and uncontrolled than usual, to the point of even biting his own tail. Tai Lung is finally met with an equal strength and skill, not because of them being within the same weight class, meaning in terms of similar stature and build, but by being completely outmatched to Po's learned strength through his inabilities. Unlike Tai Lung, whose only form of kung fu he's learned is performing utter unbreaking violence. These two are so similar, yet so different throughout the entire film, but it truly comes to head with this battle and each of their responses to the scroll. Po looked to his father figure, the champ, the greatest of all time, Mr. Ping, who gave him the valuable lesson that there is no secret ingredient to reaching your full potential. Only what's inside can you truly unlock everything you can possibly be, which is something Tai Lung can't understand. He won't understand.
You're just a big fat panda!
Making one last futile attempt to battle, a weakened Tai Lung was finally caught in the whooshy finger hole by Po. Tai Lung attempted to call his bluff by saying that Shifu wouldn't have taught him such a move, showing that such a move was also never taught to him, but became horrified. Miss Po told him that he simply
Figured it out.
figured it out.
Skadoosh.
Po then performed the moves, obliterating Tai in a boom that was felt all throughout the edges of the Valley of Peace. This being the end of Tai Lung, as he was sent to the spirit realm, never to be corporeal in the mortal realm again, his infinite prison where he would be held for the rest of his days. So that's Kung Fu Panda, I mean the story and impact of Tai Lung. Again, sorry for recapping so much, but it's so important in understanding why Tai Lung is even greater than we remember. He has so much depth and subtle storytelling that I've unraveled throughout this whole video. The way he connects to every character is astonishing, from his father-son, student-master relationship with Shifu, and how Shifu's own pride and goals got tangled in with Tai Lung's, to the point of breaking, to how Shifu's kindness to Tai during his training leads to his harsh training of the Furious Five, and that all even more leads to the development of Po, as he was randomly chosen by Oogway's vision of Tai Lung's escaping, which led Shifu to become even harsher and harsher until he learned to grow and become whole again, achieving inner peace through the conclusiveness of Tai Lung and him finally having trained the Dragon Warrior. The way he connects to Po and every other character of this film makes Tai Lung the perfect villain, as he is the reason for all the events happening in the movie in the first place, and for all of the events concluding. Even if he wasn't there for the entire flick, you can feel what he's done to these people every second they speak personally. And without this first film, we wouldn't have Lord Shen and his incredible sequel to even be compared to the mighty Tai Lung. Remember, without Tai Lung, there is no Kung Fu Panda movie, there was no Dragon Warrior before, because there was none of his darkness to oppose, to need this balance. And that's why Tai Lung is an incredible character that is way better than even I remember. With all that said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this analysis deep dive into Tai Lung and how much he affects everything about this movie and this franchise. Make sure to drink every time I've said Tai Lung. Ha 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 ha. Also, thank you to the Kung Fu Panda fandom wiki for helping me describe stuff better than I could even dream. Be sure to check that out. Apparently, Tai Lung is also in A Kung Fu Holiday, the Legendary Warriors video game, and in the Legends Awesomest show. If you'd like to see me talk about those, or even if you enjoyed me talking about this guy, make sure to tell me. Bye bye.